So moving forward a little bit, I've been watching a lot of your performances on YouTube recently, and what I really love about listening to you is you have such a depth to um, your musicianship, and it's so vivid, and you have such a stage presence. When you're on stage, what is going through your head as you try to take your listeners on your musical journey, and how do you go about bringing this music to life and convincing or trying to convince your audience of your conviction musically?
Um, it's a very good question. And I mean, every single concert feels different because I've gotten pretty comfortable with my nerves and dealing with
Mm,
them, and I feel like it's possible to use one's nerves as a kind of a strength.
mm,
But like in general, what I really try to do is wipe the slate clean somehow. It's like because
mm,
I mean, I'm spending so much time on this music, and I've been practicing it a lot. I mean, hopefully, I know how it goes, and I know the beginning and the ending and the middle, and I'm hugely fascinated by jazz musicians and
mm,
by improvisation.
mm,
And I envy that kind of freedom a
mm,
lot.
mm,
And what I really try to do is just like, yes, I know there's a pianissimo there. Forget
mm,
about it, kind of, you know? New color, somehow to start completely over and try to convince myself that it's the first time that I'm ever playing the piece,
mm,
so that it feels as fresh as possible. I really want freshness,
yeah,
and I really want the audience to be curious and be surprised
yeah,
um, and feel the music somehow. So I usually I tend to I like to eat a banana. I don't know if it's psychological or if it's true, but I've heard that banana kind of can slow down the heart rate a little bit.
mm, mm,
And I enjoy to just like breathe a little bit. I enjoy to play really slowly. I enjoy to play silly melodies actually. Like
mm,
sometimes I'll play Hey Jude or like something from the Beatles or a pop
yeah,
song or just a melody on the cello just to feel kind of free and comfortable and
sure,
singing and like um basically I do what I can to feel really relaxed and good in my body
yeah,
on the cello and to feel sort of like, oh, this is the first time doing this kind of.
mm,
And um yeah, and that makes it so much more fun, and that makes immediacy much more natural to me.
mm,
And I love immediacy. I think immediacy without any sort of reason doesn't always make a lot of sense. But it's like
yeah,
if you really know a piece, you're not gonna play a place that is pianissimo fortissimo, but it might be a totally different color if you don't, if it's been ingrained in your body, and then you play it a little differently.
yeah,
It might be a color you hadn't discovered or that hasn't been heard before even. I mean,
mhm,
the most nice thing when you hear a concert is when you hear a color you haven't heard before. I mean,
yeah,
I love that. So, yeah, so what I try to go in just with a very open mind, and
mhm,
before that is all of the work, but by then is a celebration and an invitation to my entire process.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. And that's so great. I mean, yeah, trying to keep things fresh. But I'm curious because I'm sure there's pieces like, let's say, the Dvorak Concerto or some of the Bach suites that you've probably performed hundreds of times now. And like, how do you like psychologically try to keep it fresh in your mind? Like, what do you do to go about that?
Um, that's a good question. I tend to like I think that if it breathes, that's a good thing. And when I
Mm,
hear the melody, I'll still somehow I'll hear that melody and I'll still be in love with it somehow. It's not that my like and the fact that I'm still in love with it and I'm like 27 now, as to when I was
Mm-mm.
16 or something the first time I was in love with it. In a way, makes it a different piece because the way I fall in love is different than when I was 16, and
Yeah.
the way I play is different, and the way I hear is different.
Mm.
So, like, if one embraces it as like a whole life kind of thing, and really trusts that, and in a way trusts the fact that things changes, and I think
Mm.
change is hard, but still things changes and they do, and what can you
Mm.
really do about it? And then it's like you're still gonna hear it differently because it's a different day and the light is
Yeah.
different, and like I feel like awareness is important, and if one can like feel the light or the imagination behind the work, and at the same time be where you are and
Yeah.
be centered and stuff. It's like sort of like it's just always different, I think.
Mm.
Even if it's the 500th time you're playing something. And I think that's why there's those Baroque musicians who've played those Bach suites a
Mm.
trillion times, is because they really have, they really realized that.
Mm.
And so yeah, I think that's my way of just like, you know, if you bring about awareness, I think it will always somehow feel different, but you'll
Yeah.
still love it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and going back
I mean,
to
of
the
course, I've
book.
had.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I
No, no,
mean,
go ahead, go ahead.
like, I mean, I'm not saying that no matter what, any day I'm gonna be like, oh, this is the best. Sometimes I feel like shit, and playing the cello, and I'm like, oh my God, it
Yeah.
sounds horrible, and like, really, I can't really do this, and I'm like, I guess I gotta quit. And I do it for a couple of hours, and then like usually, oh, it's a bit better now. Now I feel a
Yeah.
bit better, and then like I can't make it breathe. Why can't I make it? And then I forget about it. And like
Yeah.
my uncle, he's also my uncle Ian is very much like this.
Mm.
He's just saying like, oh, I can't play the violin, and when I start thinking about my fingers or my hand, I can't. But then if I just move the bow, then suddenly I'm just moving the bow, and then there's music. Then I hear music, and then it's like,
Yeah.
so there's a sort of effortlessness to making music, which can be
Right.
hugely frustrating sometimes because you really want to make music, and
Right.
then it's like, why am I not making music? I'm really trying. It's like maybe I shouldn't try. Oh, now I'm making music. It's such a paradox.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting going back to Bach because you talk about the repeats, and back in Bach's time when he was writing music and he put repeats, I don't think he re put the repeats with the expectation that the performer would do it the same both times, right? Like, I
oh,
mean, but back then people studied or were more comfortable with improvising, like you were mentioning.
yeah.
And I mean, up until I would say about like the 20th century, I think improvisation was just part of your regimen, honestly, as a musician.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it really kind of goes back to like our stunted growth with our individual voices is we're so like narrow-minded sometimes as musicians with like all right I have to play what's on the page. I have to just do what's
Mhm.
there. And back then like it was almost unheard of for musicians to not be able to improvisate on the
Yeah.
spot or come up with different ornaments or whatever. And it's yeah, it's really
And
fascinating
it's so
actually.
much fun. I'm
Yeah.
trying that more and more with the years of like improvising over those suites in the repeats,
Mm.
and like finding new things, or a new little
Mm.
thing you can do here and there. And like I did it actually for the first time. I tried doing it on the spot like a month
Mm.
and a half ago with the
Oh wow.
repeats, because I had been practicing improvising a little bit over them, and
Mm.
then
Right.
at the moment I was like, oh, I'll do a trill here, I'll do a little scale here, and like I mean, it was I'm definitely not a master of that kind of a thing yet, but it was really interesting to try
Yeah.
and do it. And actually it felt really refreshing, and I think the audience enjoyed it, and like
Yeah.
I think it's just so much fun. So
Mm.
I think people who are, I mean, it's of course good to be serious and wanna play music
Mm.
and
Yeah.
whatever, but like but like when you just open the mind a little bit and don't you necessarily change the spend, you can spend more time on it even.
Yeah.
Like, but if you're having some fun at the same time, then it's like great. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of in the spirit. Have you dabbled at, writing your own cadenzas for the Haydn concerti or anything like that? Or
Not yet. No, I
yeah.
haven't come to. Yeah, I do have some ideas brewing. It's not as much
Sure.
the cadenzas, but it's actually more doing like arrangements of pop songs or jazz classics that I love and like playing them as
Okay.
encores with a string section of an orchestra or something like that.
Oh, great. Yeah.
That I've been dreaming about doing at some point, and now I'm saying it in public because I'm pressuring myself to that it's gonna happen at some point.
Yeah. We'll all look
But
forward to it.
yeah, within the next 10 years, I promise something
Yeah.
fun will happen on that arena.
Yeah.